How's it going, everyone? Reckless Yuki here, and in today's video what I plan on doing is modifying my Qanba Q1 fight stick. And this fight stick I showcased in last week's video where I talked about how I was prepping for Street Fighter V, and getting this fight stick was one of those things that I did in order to prep for it. And I really like this fight stick because for $80 you're getting a lot for your money. The buttons don't feel too bad, the joystick just feels fine, and the fact that it could clamp to my desk with these mounts is just fantastic, and I really like that. Instead of having to sit at my lap, it doesn't move around off my desk. It works perfectly how it's supposed to, and it just works fine with a PC. So that was the main reason I opted for this instead of waiting for a Xbox One or a PS4 fight stick, is I just wanted something that would be used with the PC, since I plan on playing fighting games on the PC. Maybe in the future I might try to get over to the PlayStation 4 if they come out with something cool that is only for the PlayStation 4. But right now I'm pretty happy and content with the PC, especially because I'm able to play at a higher graphics setting than I could with any of the consoles. But anyways, today's video, as far as the modifications, I've seen plenty of videos on YouTube when I was researching this stick before I purchased it, and one of the main appeals of it was the fact that it comes with quality parts. You know, they don't feel cheap, they feel just as good as any other part. But if you're a professional player or you're trying to go into the professional brackets, I'm sure you might be able to tell the difference. But me, I'm very amateurish. I can't really tell the difference from this with the parts I'm about to replace them with. But the fact that I can replace them with the nicer parts was kind of, you know, it was one of the reasons I purchased this. And hopefully this video will be better than the videos I saw on YouTube, because I'll actually utilize a tripod instead of, you know, holding the camera with my hand and trying to do everything with the other. But anyways, the parts that I plan to swap this out with, I purchased from focusattack.com, and I guess just a little shout out to them. I'm not getting sponsored by them by any means, I'm just an average customer in their eyes. But when I ordered all my parts from them, what they did was they sent me the wrong button. They sent me some of these screw buttons instead of the ones I ordered, and I sent them an email saying, hey, you guys sent me the wrong stuff, how are we going to fix this? And what they basically did is they resent out the buttons that I actually ordered, and then within the box they gave me a shipping label to return the parts that they incorrectly sent me back to them at no cost to me. So that was pretty cool. So the only cost I did have was the slight inconvenience of waiting a little longer to get the parts that I needed. But Focus Attack was a company that really took care of, you know, the customer if they messed up. So they definitely messed up and they definitely rectified it. So I think that was pretty fantastic of them. So as far as where to get parts to get the stuff that you need to modify a stick, I would say Focus Attack, just because of my positive experience with them thus far. But anyways, going into the parts that I plan on using, right here I have a set of Sanwa silent 30mm push buttons, and you have to get this sort of a type that are going to be able to like clamp in like this. You don't want the screw-ons, because I even checked before I even started this video, is the screw-ons will not actually fit into the holes of the buttons. So you have to get these, and I'll show you guys a closer up as I change the camera orientation where I actually get into this to modify it. But I was just going to talk about each individual part right now as we're just kind of going over the parts list as far as what I plan on putting in here. So I have these, and to replace the start button up here, it really doesn't matter, but I even picked up a Sanwa 24mm push button in order to just replace that, just to make sure that everything is Sanwa and everything is premium. And then for the fight stick, what I plan on doing is swapping it out with this new HORI Hayabusa fight stick. Now this is a little bit different than the, you know, tried and true Sanwa fight sticks or Sanwa joysticks. This has a little bit of differences, a little bit like of a shorter throw, or like there's a little bit less contact in here, so it's a smoother engagement. All these things that I wouldn't notice, but that was one of the things I read on the site when I was picking a joystick, so I thought I would pick this up and just see if it's able to fit in here. And also what I plan on doing with this joystick is I'm going to modify the spring within it to a more higher tension spring with one of these, so I'll show that on camera, mainly because I picked up a new ball, and this is pure aluminum, so it's a little bit heavier than the plastic or glass ones that a lot of people use. So because of the weight of this, to kind of keep things the same feel, they recommended a higher tension spring. So that's what we'll be getting into, is showing you how to swap that out. And as well as the restrictor gate. There is no official restrictor gate that works specifically with the Hayabusa. So if you do want to change out the restrictor gate from the square to either a circle or an octagonal, you're gonna have to do some modifications to that restrictor gate, and I'll kind of show you when I rearrange the camera exactly what I did to this to make sure that it will fit with this. So anyways, that's for the most part what's going to be involved. So I'm going to transition to the next segment and have the camera rearranged for my table and show you guys exactly what I'll be doing. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is modify the HORI Hayabusa joystick. What I plan on doing, like I said earlier, is I'm going to swap out the spring with this more high tension spring, mainly because the ball top that I picked out is pure aluminum, so it's decently heavy. So I'll be first going over how to do that, and the tools that I have selected aren't necessarily going to be used for their purpose as a tool. They're just whatever I found around that is going to help me take this thing apart. Main thing you just really need is a screwdriver if you just plan on taking out the restrictor gate, as long as you modify the restrictor gate appropriately. And I guess just to kind of go over that right now as far as how I modified it. So the restrictor gate here at the bottom basically has the same points of contact as these kind of, I guess, oval type holes here. But the way that this is held on, unlike a lot of the Sanwa joysticks, is a lot of the Sanwa joysticks have these little clips that fit into these rectangular holes, whereas the Hayabusa is held on with these screws. And most of these sticks that I find don't have like holes for their screws. So what I had to do is specifically drill out these holes. It's kind of hard for the camera to focus, I guess. Come on, focus camera. No? I have it set to automatic focus. Anyways, right here at the top left of these holes, I had to drill them out, and I had to use two different drill bits, one large enough for the screw itself to go through, and another one I drilled out a lot wider, and I only drilled it out about halfway because this restrictor plate is about twice as thick as the Hayabusa restrictor plate if we just kind of go side by side. So what I had to do to make sure that the screws that came with the Hayabusa was long enough is I had to drill out a kind of a set hole so that the head of the screw can be set within it, but then still have enough of the plastic on the other side to act as retention so it wouldn't be completely useless. And so that's how I modified the restrictor plate in order to be used with the Hayabusa stick here. But anyways, going over to what you need to do in order to modify this is you have to basically push down on this, I guess this contact plastic part here, and you have to take off the C-clip. So this is going to be a kind of a pain in the butt to take off and also to put back on. I already did this once, so I knew exactly what I was doing in order to do this, but basically like the only way I was able to get this off is to push down on it and take something like a really small screwdriver or even a really small wrench in order to like get in here and wedge this thing off. And nice, it landed on the table so I don't have to get up and go find it on the carpet. So this came off a lot easier because this is the second time I'm taking it off. The first time was just a major pain in the butt. So definitely be aware of that when you're trying to do it. And so then you just take off this plastic piece, take out the spring, and we're gonna put in the new one. And I guess just to kind of show these springs side by side, as you can see, the spring that I'm replacing it with is just a little bit longer than the one that came with it, so that's how it's going to give it more tension, is because it's going to be compressed a lot farther. But anyways, so just to replace it, just put the new spring in and put this cap back on. And when you put this cap on, it might be difficult to push it down. Now that it's a tighter spring, I'm definitely having to use more force. And then just put this on the best you can. And like, you might have to use something like a pair of pliers to be able to do it. I don't have a pair of pliers on me. I have whatever these are. These look like wire strippers that came with my computer case as far as like the tools, but it's gonna work because I'm never gonna use these wire strippers. And it's gonna allow me to get a grip on this and push it on. So, let's see. And it's small little parts that I find difficult to work with. Okay. So now that C-clamp is basically put back on. Let's just make sure that it stays on there just by squeezing it again. Okay. So that's how you modify the spring, and it definitely feels a lot stiffer than it did before. So if you want a really stiff stick, you could just put one of these on if you're not trying to counteract the weight of a aluminum ball top. But this felt just fine the way it was. You don't really need to go through the step. I'm just trying to do it just so that I can make sure that's not going to be too loosey-goosey with the weight of this ball top. But anyways, now that the spring is swapped out, what we're going to do is just undo the screws here and take off the restrictor plate. All right, now all the screws are off. You just remove the restrictor plate, and then you can see the bottom here, as well as the points where it contacted, and then all these switches that this joystick engages to give you movement. And all we have to do now is just replace it and line up the orientation. So just like that, and all the screw holes look like they matched up, so I didn't screw it up, so I'm pretty happy about that. And you just have to put all the things in and screw it back down. Alright, so the restrictor plate is put on. And let's see if you get a closer look of exactly what I'm talking about when I said I drilled out the holes. If it's gonna focus, come on camera, focus. Oh, damn it. It's not gonna focus. But anyways, the screw heads here are recessed into the plastic to the larger hole that I drilled out, but they stop right in the center because that's where the smaller hole starts, allowing just the threaded part of the screw to go through to make contact with this, because this is a thicker restrictor plate. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't mess up when explaining what I did. But one thing to watch out for is without this nice thicker restrictor plate, you kind of lose protection from all these little nice wires here. So make sure you handle this with care from now on while you're continuing to modify your stick. But anyways, that's the octagonal restrictor plate installed into the HORI Hayabusa stick. So we're done with the stick for now. All right, now next thing to do is to flip the stick around and make sure you take off those plastic pieces so that it's not going to get in the way, and you're going to need to take them off so it's not going to bind the two plastic halves that you're trying to take off together. And what we're going to do is take out 6 screws in the back, and you're going to have to void the warranty. And what I suggest you guys doing also, I forgot to mention this before, but before you purchase a stick like this and plan on opening up to modify it, make sure that you actually test the stick out to make sure everything works, all the buttons, so you know that after you modify, after you switch out a button, you know that it wasn't the stick itself or the circuits itself, it was probably the button that you switched out with that could have been bad. So that's what I did before I even decided to open this up. I made sure to go through whatever your favorite game is and make sure every button registers. But anyways, now getting to the back, just take out the screws and the 6 points and then just pull this apart in order to get into the insides of your stick. All right, now that all the screws are done and you open up the side bay here, you just gently pull it off to make sure that all the screws are loose. And then you can just set this to the side. And I recommend you keep this up. Don't flip it over or you might have the screws fall out. And if you just keep it like this and set it on a table on the side, then you don't have to worry about putting the screws back in the holes. Now, looking at this, as you see, this is the 2 PCBs as far as how things connect and interact. And what you basically just have to do is, it's really simple to get in here. There's not really much to it. As you see, the stock restrictor plate that came with my Sanwa was a square, but I swapped it out with this octagonal, and these little tabs here, what I was talking about, how the other sticks are held on. These were just a real pain in the dick to get off. The screws of the Hayabusa is a lot easier, but you have to modify the Hayabusa in order for it to work. And so I like the way that this is, or I like the way that the Hayabusa is, vice these little tabs. But anyways, let's just get into it. One thing you want to do when you do take this off is make sure to take a picture of this just so you see the orientation of how everything looks, so that for whatever reason, if you have to go back and put things back the way it was, or when you're swapping out the buttons, you decide to pull out all these wires, you know exactly which wire goes where so the mapping stays the same. So that's what I'll do. I'm gonna take a picture and then I'm gonna start unplugging things and just swapping things out so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. All right, now that everything you need to unplug is unplugged, one thing you have to do in order to take out this joystick is you have to take off the ball top first for the joystick to pull out. So what we're gonna do is just take a flathead screwdriver, hold it right here while we unscrew it, because that's the only way to take off the ball top. So bear with me. And I'm just gonna use this little dinky screwdriver to do this. It shouldn't take much force to undo this. Yeah, so then once you start it, then you should be able to just hold it and you can undo the rest. And just a quick note, the ball top that came with the Qanba is a really cheap ball top. It doesn't even have metal threads, it's just like directly into the plastic. And as I can see here, some of the plastic was left behind on the threads of the Qanba joystick. So the joystick and the ball top isn't very good, and I saw videos where people try to put on a different ball top and they're only able to get it about halfway because the threads don't meet up the same as traditional Sanwa threads. So I'm not sure what exactly it is, but it doesn't really meet up that well. So just to kind of keep that in mind, if you're planning on just taking the Qanba Q1 and swapping out your own ball top, you might find some difficulties when doing so. But anyways, now all I have to do is just undo these 4 screws and then take out the stock stick. All right, now that those are done, this should pull off as long as I got all these loosened. I guess some of these were a little bit in there still. Crap. All right, there we go. So then it just comes right off, and then you should be able to just place the new stick on there and then line up the holes. And what's nice about this is like the original stick lined up with these holes, but you can get, it gives you more mounting options with this Qanba. So this is like where, or I guess, actually I'm not sure what these were for. Actually, never mind, these were the mounting holes. Don't mind me. And make sure you keep track of all the screws. One more in here. Don't lose these. And then the last thing to do, I guess, to just take out all the parts is what you have to do to take out these buttons is you have to push them and then just pop them out. And should just be simple like that. Well, another thing, if you plan on taking out the start button and swapping that out, it's basically the same procedure. Just unplug these wires and just push it out. And it's kind of hard to get your finger in there to get this little set, so probably easiest just use a screwdriver to pry it down and push, and then that's how it comes out pretty easy, instead of trying to dig your fingers in there. Another thing is I noticed is they kind of bent these teeth on the start button, so I think that might be because they had some issues with how much room it has. So one thing to consider when putting it in, you might want to bend those of the replacement as well. And just go over like why these screw-ons wouldn't work. Basically, the thing that was holding it up was that this threaded portion on the button wasn't actually going through the holes. It wouldn't fit that way. So one thing you could do if you wanted to really make one of these work is you can either just like jam it in there, or you can take a Dremel and round out these holes a little bit, but I didn't want to do either of those because if you try to jam this in there, You could mess up the threads of the actual plastic because this is just plastic, so I'm sure they could deform easily. And deformed threads really make it difficult to screw on the fastener onto them, and it might not work and it might be busted where you have to probably just hold it in place with a hot glue gun. So I wouldn't recommend it. I'll recommend getting these sorts of buttons that has these little like push on tabs, and these will fit into the Qanba Q1, especially if you're modifying a different stick. If you want to replace the buttons, it's best to open up the stick to kind of see what type of buttons it has installed already, and that's a good indication of what you should get in order to replace them. So just a little bit there. And as far as the differences between the Qanba or the Sanwa push buttons and the Qanbas is, now that I have them both out, the Qanbas feel a little bit more plasticky. Like it's like when you push it down, it doesn't feel as much of a resistance as the Sanwa. The Sanwa feels like more of a smoother actuation than the Qanba. The Qanba kind of, it's just like gives a lot easier than the Sanwa, and I could even tell that. So the Sanwa is a better push button than the Qanba, but it really is hard to notice, especially if you're just sitting there pounding on the buttons in your fighting game. So if you want the Sanwa, there is a tactile difference, but I don't think it's necessarily necessary to swap them out. But if you want it, it's relatively cheap. Each one of these buttons are less than $3. So you can, just replace the 6 that you really need, and then just plug up the last 2 with just a blanks, just so that you only really need the ones that you need if you wanted to save a little bit of cash, but not too big of a difference. Now, one thing to take note when you're replacing the push buttons is when you put them in, just make sure you line it up the way that it was before as far as where these tabs were. And then when you actually push down on it, don't push on the actual sorry, I'm not even in the camera. Don't push on the actual button. Make sure you push on the outer rim here, because if you actually push on the button, you could potentially damage it or wear it where it won't be working as good as it was before, because it takes a little bit of force to push it down. Not too much, like I didn't really have to put much force down, but make sure you don't press on the button when pushing these in. Now that the buttons are pushed back in, before you place the new joystick in there, probably best to plug up all the wires so you can push down on them with a decent amount of force if you need to, without worrying about kind of putting too much strain on the joystick if it was inserted. So we're going to go ahead and wire it up now, and with the help of the picture I took prior to removing everything, I'll make sure to put the wires back where they're supposed to go. And if you replace the start button, what you want to do is just go ahead and put these in there, these little prongs, and then just go ahead and bend them down the way that it was before, just to make sure that there's not going to be any contact issues. It's just best to kind of keep things the same orientation. So that's what I did here, is just bend them down, and I'll test this out to make sure it still does work, but it should be fine. And there won't be any short because it has these little like plastic sleeves over it, so it's not like it's gonna have the metal contacting the metal, so you should be fine there. But anyways, now that all the buttons are rewired, we're going to place this in there and go ahead and bolt this down to secure it, and then we'll be able to flip it over and install the ball top. Here's a tip: make sure when you're actually doing this or actually installing a stick, that you're not installing the one that you just took out like I just did. So here's a pro tip for you guys. All right, this is something that I just noticed with the HORI Hayabusa stick here, is the fact that when I try to mount up the holes, it doesn't align properly in the center of the hole. If you guys can see that, it's a little bit off to the top. What's happening is that this square mounting plate is interfering with this plastic part within the case. So what I'm gonna do is take this out, go outside and Dremel this side off, just so that it'll be able to fit in there properly. And another thing is that this wire is having some interference with the actual button here. So what I'm probably gonna have to do is just push this button out in order to secure this, and then push this out of the way to put the button back in. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm sorry, I didn't get in the camera. So what I basically have to do is this wire isn't really easily able to put on here because the button is in the way. So I'm gonna push the button down and push this in, and then put the button back in with this being kind of pulled to the side a little bit, and hopefully everything will be put in there. So just a second, there's gonna be a transition while I modify the stick here, all right? All right, I'm back, and what I basically just had to do was take off a little bit of the corner here. Not sure if you guys can see it well, but you see I just basically took a Dremel and grinded a little corner of it off so that it will actually fit in there and it will allow me to center it up. So that part's fixed. And let's see if my theory as far as pushing this button down, putting the plug in, and then putting the button back in is correct as far as how I can make sure that this all works. So anyways, let's install this first. And one thing that probably need to do is, if you do grind off this part, make sure you repaint this. I don't have any paint with me now. I have to go get some in order to paint this up to make sure it doesn't rust. But I plan on doing that in the near future. I'm just gonna go ahead and finish up this video just to finish up this video. But anyways, moving on. All right, so I got the joystick installed with it connected, and one thing that I noticed is that it's a really tight fit here, and the PCB, the pins here are slightly bent up because the way I had to install this was I had to push this push button down so I can get the plug here directly to fit on there, and then I had to bend this up slightly, and then as I pushed this push button in, I had to push down these pins to make enough room, because right here just wasn't enough room for what it needed to do, but I was able to squeeze them both on. So hopefully after I reassemble everything, I'm gonna find that everything still works just fine, that I didn't break any of the pins, or I didn't break the little PCB here on the Hayabusa, but we'll see. But that's everything that's put back together. So the joystick is installed, all of the buttons are installed with the associated wires wired up correctly, and even the start button is replaced. So hopefully everything works, and as you see, the joystick there goes around the octagonal gate just fine. Everything is secured. And one thing you want to do right now while you have this open is you want to install the sleeve and the ball top, because you're going to need a screwdriver on this side as well as turning the ball top at the same time in order to make it secure. So that's one of the things you want to do before you close everything up. So that's what we're going to get into. And for my ball top, I have the silver one, which I already showed you, but then I also have this silver shaft sleeve as well as this dust cover so that it looks unison. And I think the silver with the white will just look pretty good. I think gold with white would have looked good as well, but I decided to keep it a little bit more simple in silver since the top of the board has some silver accents on it. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is put on the dust cover. And then you want to put on your shaft. And then you take your ball top and you start screwing this on. And then when it gets down to the bottom here, what you want to do is go ahead and take the screwdriver on the other side of your flathead so that you could get some counter force on it while you screw it down. And it's probably best if you use something a little bit better than this little dinky one. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out the bit with this so I can actually get some force. All right, now that looks pretty good. And what you want to do now is just double check one last time to make sure everything is in its place and nothing came loose. And then we're going to just gently set this down and get the cover, realign it, and we're going to screw this down and close it up. All right, now here's the Q1 all assembled and put back together with my aluminum silverish joystick and shaft and dust cover. And I think the silver looks nice. It matches the aesthetics of the stick itself because there's a lot of silver accents. So I think I went with a good job of picking the silver. It kind of matches it. And then just the white buttons, but everything is swapped out, and that's how you do it. Now the next thing that we have to do is we're going to go through another transition as I move the camera, and then we're going to kind of test to make sure that all the buttons work. And then if all the buttons work and the joystick works without any delay, or there isn't a dead spot, then you know you did a good job and you can be happy with what you did. If not, you have to undo everything and kind of look at what could have possibly went wrong. If you had a cable that isn't secured anymore or something came loose, it's just troubleshooting, make sure you wiggle all the parts, but hopefully everything goes well and we'll get into it here shortly. Welcome back from the transition. Hopefully you guys enjoy the camera angle as we see that the Qanba Q1 is reattached to my desk, plugged in my PC with Ultra Street Fighter 4 fired up. And what we are in right now is some training mode with the input display on, and I feel this is probably the best way to make sure that all the buttons are working correctly, as well as all the directions from the joystick are working correctly. And just kind of going over, as you can see, I didn't mess up. Everything is working how it should. So good job on me, I guess, especially for the first time modding a stick. It was really easy with the Q1. Now there were some difficulties like I explained as I was going through with the fitment of the new stick itself, but everything seems to be working just fine. I'm not having any problems with inputting my commands. As you see there, I was able to successfully do a Shoryuken and a Raging Demon. I think that's what it's called with the Evil Ryu. But everything works out just fine, so not really worried about it. And the buttons feel fantastic. I didn't think that the buttons would make a difference over the stock Qanbas, but the Qanbas turned out not to be very good. I mean, like, they're fantastic. For an $80 fight stick, the stock Qanba buttons and the stock Qanba fight stick are more than you really need, and they are perfect for playing games, especially if you're amateur. But if you want to spruce up your Qanba Q1 to a higher end stick to give it that more professional feel, definitely this modification is definitely worth it, because I feel these buttons definitely feel more solid than it did with the stock Qanba buttons. And then this joystick, the Hayabusa, it's a very nice stick. I'm not sure if the aluminum ball top with the higher tension spring made a difference with how the Hayabusa originally feels, but this combination, it definitely feels fantastic. I definitely feel that it's a little bit, might be a placebo effect, but I feel it's a little bit more solid than the Qanba stick, just a tad bit. So if you're willing to take everything apart and order the parts to do it yourself, I think it's a very worthwhile investment to especially spruce up something like the Q1, which is the only stick that I know of after weeks of researching that can mount to a desk like it is, and it's the perfect solution for me to game with. So I'm very happy with it. So anyways, that should be it for the video. That's enough of me rambling on, and hopefully the video turned out well. Yeah, so basically that just took long enough for my coffee to get cold, and so I'll probably just edit the video and continue playing with the Qanba Q1. Now, one thing I was thinking of was replacing the left trigger, right trigger with the actual plugs so that I wouldn't use them, since you're not really supposed to use the triple buttons when you're playing, you know, professional Street Fighter. But I figured I'm gonna have this stick for other games, like a lot of ROMs I just downloaded on my computer. So if for whatever reason I need more buttons, I would like to kind of have these there. But not necessarily, you don't really need them if you just plan on playing a fighting game. And even if you're just planning on playing like MAME arcade games, I think you'll be fine with just the original 6. You don't need the buttons on the right, but I don't know, I don't want to not have them and then realize that I do need them. But anyways, so that's pretty much it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like the video if you did, dislike it if you thought it sucked, which I don't think it should suck. I think I did a decent job. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really interested to see what your guys' intake from this is. And let me know if this video motivated you to get a Q1 so that you can do the same thing that I did. But anyways, that's enough of me rambling. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys again in the next video. All right, bye-bye.